On October 10th, the Trump administration's Office of Management and Budget announced the mass firing of federal workers had begun as the government shutdown continues. Employees in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services were among some of the federal workers getting termination notices. And while the full extent of the firings is not yet known, the Budget Office does call it substantial. It's also being called unprecedented and aggressive. Typically, during a government shutdown, federal workers may be furloughed, then restored to their jobs once the shutdown ends with back pay. The Trump administration had already said some 750,000 federal workers were to be furloughed during the shutdown, but the reduction in force that started on October 10th was more aggressive, permanently laying off federal workers. On top of some of the reductions some of those agencies had already felt earlier this year because of executive orders. A spokesman for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services said HHS employees across multiple divisions have received reduction in force notices. All HHS employees receiving those notices were designated non-essential by their respective divisions, and that caused confusion and fear among those department workers. Other layoffs included personnel from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Education Department's Office of Special Education, and even the CDC, where some workers received termination notices, then were reinstated, and then terminated again. Federal law is specific about the process that reductions in force must follow. That includes giving workers at least 60 days notice, which can be shortened to 30 days in some exceptions. Several unions had already sued over the threat of reductions in force ahead of this shutdown as violating federal law. Two unions are now asking the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California to invalidate the actual firings, calling them illegal. We link to a number of resources on the mass firing of federal workers in the description below.